President of the Conrado Consulting Group. Today, I'm going to review things that you should consider before you look for a new opportunity. So basically, is it time for a change? There are a few things that you need to ask yourself. Whether you've been in your current role for a year, 5 years, 10 years, or 20 years, there are things to consider that may not come to mind immediately when you're thinking of a career change. The first question you should ask yourself is, why do you want to leave? Is the catalyst a temporary situation brought on by a possible merger, acquisition, or new management? Could you move to a different department versus leaving the company? What changes could entice you to stay? Would you like a promotion, more variety in your duties? If your role has changed, how has it changed? Do you have more responsibilities? If you do have more responsibilities, did those new responsibilities come with a pay raise? Some other questions you should ask yourself are, what are your career path options if you stay or if you leave? Have you talked with your supervisor about a succession plan for your department and for your role specifically? Keeping your skills and experience current is important. Sometimes companies don't upgrade on a regular basis, and you may be working with software that was sunsetted 3 years ago. That's going to impact your options if you do leave because you don't have experience with the most current version. You have to think about marketable skills, like I just mentioned, and other skills that may not be evident on the surface. For example, what have been your proudest accomplishments and contributions in your career, and how can you take those success stories and use them to impress potential employers? Have you considered what your benefits are in your current role and what might be difficult to duplicate elsewhere? Some benefits like on-site childcare are rare and hard to duplicate. Also, you have to think about your PTO. How much PTO do you have saved? And how much PTO do you have based on your seniority? And would you be able to replicate that somewhere else as a new employee? We talked a little bit about this already, but you need to ask yourself, what are the plans for growth or changes with your current employer? Do they plan to upgrade or move to new software? If so, you may want to stay. You may want to learn the new skills associated with that upgrade or an implementation of a new software. It make you more marketable in the future. Is there a merger or acquisition coming soon, which could create reductions in force or may require you to relocate or be reassigned to a different opportunity? How do you feel about learning a new software, being relocated or reassigned? What would you like to duplicate if you do leave? Changing employers can impact you in ways you may not realize until it's too late. Make a list of good and bad things about your current role and rank the items in order of importance. What's the most important thing you'd like to have in your new opportunity? And what are the things you just can't live without? You have to think about the positive items and if they can be duplicated, like free coffee. That's pretty easy. A lot of companies have free coffee in their departments. Other things that you have to consider are the culture and environment. Is it a very specific culture and environment? It just fits you very well. It's not something that you'd expect to be duplicated in a great number at other places. How well do you work with your team? Have you become very close? Is there a particular coworker that you've become friends with and you don't know if you'd want to leave? You have to think about things that could change. Could you improve your commute, or could you have better benefits or higher pay? You have to think about your 5-year plan. Where do you see yourself in 5 years if you stay? What could change if you leave? Could you enjoy a shorter commute, better long-term options for your career, or better benefits? Could you have better work-life balance? You need to take time to talk with your friends and family before you decide. And if you do decide to leave, the next step is your job search strategy. If you decide to leave, what are you looking for in your next position? Would you like a heavily structured environment or a more autonomous one? How much travel is acceptable in a new role? Would you consider a consultant or remote role? Will your current or future role take you to the pinnacle of your career or just be a change of scenery? Are you reaching for the next rung on the career ladder, or are you just bored and a job is a job? Do you want to remain where you live now, or will you consider relocation? And if so, where? And if you would consider relocation, you need to think about the cost of living in the areas that you'd consider relocating to. If you live in Texas and you'd like to move to California, the cost of living in California is much higher than it is in Texas. So you need to do a cost of living calculation, and there are several cost of living calculators online that you can use, and look at what your salary would have to be in order for you to maintain the same lifestyle in the new state. You also have to consider, if you live in California and you want to move to North Carolina is less expensive to live in than California. So you're probably going to have to take a cut in pay in order to be considered as a candidate for any roles in North Carolina, because they're probably not going to offer you the same salary. Your job search strategy is very important. You need to think about the 4 most popular methods candidates can use in your job search. And this is according to my professional opinion. The internet is probably the least effective way. It's pretty anonymous, excuse me. It's pretty anonymous. LinkedIn is somewhat effective, still pretty anonymous. Referral, you know someone that works at the company and they can get your resume in front of the hiring manager. That's much more effective. And a recruiter is probably the most effective. And that's my humble opinion as a recruiter. What to consider before you apply to a job online. When you apply to a job online, your resume goes through an applicant tracking software, an ATS. The ATS searches your resume for keywords and terms specific to each job. If your resume doesn't have those keywords and terms, your resume won't be presented to the hiring manager. You also have to think about how many people are applying to this job. Unless you're one of the first candidates to apply, your resume may not be presented to the hiring manager. If they receive 300 resumes, they're not going to look at all 300 resumes. They're going to look at the first few, maybe a couple of dozen, could be more if it's a hard to fill position, but it's probably not going to be all 300. Usually only the first few candidates who make it past the ATS are the candidates who receive an interview. So they'll talk to a few people. Usually they'll find someone in that first group. If not, it might expand, but it's still not going to be all 300 people. What to consider before you apply to a job on LinkedIn. A lot of the same things apply. It's pretty anonymous. You may see who the company recruiter is that the jobs are going to go to, but it's still probably going to go through their applicant tracking software. You also have to realize that unless you're one of the first candidates to apply, you probably aren't going to make it to the hiring manager. Usually only the first few candidates who do make it to the internal recruiter are candidates that receive an interview with the hiring manager. Referrals. An internal referral can be a great way to have your resume presented to the hiring manager. You need to ask questions. You need to know who your resume will be presented to for the opportunity. If your resume is not being sent directly to the hiring manager and it's going to the company recruiter, the hiring manager needs to know that your resume has been submitted to the company recruiter. If you're being referred through a friend or former colleague, if they can let the hiring manager know that you've applied, they can follow up with the company recruiter. Now, they're probably going to ask you to complete an online application, and you want to do that, but you also want to make sure that the hiring manager either has your name or your resume, once again, so that they can follow up with the company recruiter. Recruiters can be an excellent resource for searching for new opportunities. There are a few things you should consider when working with a recruiter. All recruiters are not alike. They're very different. Some recruiters specialize, like we do, in ERP and EMR for the healthcare industry, and others are generalists and they work on a Java developer position in the morning and an ERP application analyst in the afternoon, and they don't understand the nuances between the two. So also, if they're a generalist and they're working through an applicant tracking system and they don't have direct access to the hiring manager, you're going to face the same stumbling blocks that you would have faced with the other three options. If they do have direct access to the hiring manager, they should be able to give you specific information. They should be able to tell you about the company, the job description, the salary range, the benefits, the interview process. They should be able to tell you how many interviews there will be, how long is it going to take to get through the interview process. Is it a couple of weeks? Is it a month? Could it be longer? Who's going to be involved in the interview process? And who's going to be involved in each interview? Where will the interviews take place? Will they be on the phone? Will it be on Microsoft Teams or WebEx or some other video version? Or is it going to be in person? Keep in mind, if they have direct access to the hiring manager, then they're also going to have access to direct feedback on your resume and any interviews you may have with the client. We have a great relationship with the managers that we work with. They understand that time is of the essence, that the market is very tight and good people are not going to be on the market looking for a new opportunity for very long. So they need to get back to us as quickly as possible with feedback on a resume or feedback on an interview. So, you need to ask about the relationship that the recruiter has with the hiring manager. Some other things you need to consider is if they don't have direct access to the hiring manager, as I mentioned before, you're going to be facing the same hurdles that you would have faced with one of the other methods. We talked about specialization. It's very important to work with someone who specializes in your field. The more specialized they are, the better. The better their understanding is going to be exactly what the client is looking for. And they're also going to have a better understanding of how well your skills and experience fit with the requirements of the job. When you're talking with the recruiter, you want to understand what your competition is like. How many candidates have they submitted? How long has the job been open? How do you match up with the other candidates in the candidate pool? How do your skills and experience match not only with the job description, but with the other candidates that are in the pool? So in summary, the things you need to consider when you're thinking about making a career change is, why do you want to leave? What are your career options if you stay or if you leave? What are you looking for in your next opportunity? What are your marketable skills? What are your success stories? What's your 5-year plan? And what's your recruiting strategy? I hope this information helps you when you're considering whether you need to find a new opportunity or stay where you are. And if you have any questions, you can contact us through our website at conradoconsulting.com. You can also contact me at my email address and phone number, which are on the screen now. I hope this information helped. Good luck and goodbye.